The beer bottle slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. I didn't notice. My eyes were locked on Lauren, swaying across the hotel ballroom with him. Her coworker, Chris. Her laugh cut through the chatter, bright and careless, like she hadn't seen me standing there, clutching my drink like a lifeline. I'm Ethan, by the way, her husband of 7 years. 7 years of late-night talks, road trips, and promises I thought meant something. But that night, watching her hands brush his shoulders, I felt like a stranger in my own life. It wasn't the first time I'd wondered about Chris. 3 weeks earlier, I grabbed her phone to order pizza. Mine was dead. A text popped up. Miss my work wife already. See you tomorrow, babe. Work wife. Babe? My gut twisted. I scrolled up. Flirty emojis, little jokes I didn't get. She walked in, snatched the phone, and snapped, "What are you doing?" I asked who Chris was. "Just a friend," she said, rolling her eyes. "Don't make it weird." But it was weird. My granddad, he raised me after my folks split, used to say trust is like a rope. Once it frays, you feel in your hands. That night, staring at those texts, I felt the first snag. I told myself I was overreacting. Lauren wouldn't do that. Not to me. Therefore, I let it go, buried it under excuses. She'd been distant lately, sure. Late nights at her marketing job, quick pecks instead of real kisses. But that's just life, right? People drift. I drift too, sometimes, lost in memories of fishing with Granddad, his voice gruff. "Watch the water, Ethan. It'll tell you what's coming." I should have watched harder. Because at that party, seeing her with Chris, I realized the water wasn't calm anymore. It was churning. And when he twirled her, her eyes sparkling, something in me snapped. Not loud, not yet. Just a quiet crack, deep inside, whispering that I couldn't ignore this anymore. Lauren and I met at a dive bar in Austin. I was 25, broke, and terrible at pool. She was behind the counter, pouring shots and grinning like she knew every secret in the room. "Better luck next time, Ethan," she'd say when I scratched again. I kept coming back, not for the game, but for her. That was us. Easy, unscripted. 7 years later, we had a house, a rhythm. But rhythms change. Lately, her phone buzzed more than it used to. She'd smile at it, angle it away, say, "Just work stuff?" I'd nod, pretending I didn't notice. But after that night with the texts, pretending got harder. I brought up Chris the next morning over coffee. "So, he's your work husband?" I asked, keeping it light. She laughed, too quick, too sharp. "It's a joke, Ethan. He's just a teammate. Don't be that guy." That guy. The paranoid husband. I hated the label, so I dropped it. But then she started coming home later. "Big project," she'd say, kicking off her heels, smelling faintly of wine. I'd ask how it went. She'd shrug. "Fine. Busy. No details. No eye contact." My granddad's voice crept in. "A lie's in the gaps, son. Listen for what they don't say." The gaps were screaming now. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering when she'd stop being the girl who teased me over pool. Therefore, I checked her phone again, unlocked it while she showered. More texts. "Lunch tomorrow," from Chris. Her reply. "Only if you're buying, work husband." A winking face. My chest tightened. I could have confronted her then, but I didn't. Wanted more proof. Needed it. So when she pushed me to go to her company party, I said yes. Thought I'd see them together, gauge it myself. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was nothing. But standing there, watching her drift toward him the second we arrived, laughing, touching his arm, I knew I wasn't wrong. The rope wasn't just fraying. It was unraveling. I was holding the loose end. Our early days were golden. Lauren and I road tripped to the coast once, windows down, her singing off-key to some 90s playlist. We'd stop at gas stations, split a bag of chips, and talk about nothing, dreams, dumb movies where we'd be in 10 years. I saw her in every one of those years. Back then, she'd crash on my shoulder after a long shift, muttering about rude customers. I'd listen, tracing circles on her arm. That was trust, soft, steady. But lately, that Lauren felt like a ghost. She'd stop crashing on me. Stopped talking much at all. Work took over. Some marketing campaign she never explained. I'd ask. She'd deflect. "You wouldn't get it," she'd say, scrolling her phone. I didn't push. Should've. Because those texts from Chris weren't a one-off. After that first peek, I kept tabs. Not proud of it, but doubt's a hungry thing. I'd see her type furiously, smirk at replies, then lock the screen when I got close. Once I caught "can't wait" before it vanished. Can't wait for what? I didn't ask. Didn't want to fight. But it gnawed at me, a quiet rot. Granddad used to take me fishing on this little lake, taught me patience, how to read the ripples. Trouble's coming when the water jumps, he'd say. The water was jumping now. Therefore, the party felt like my chance to see her world, meet this Chris, prove I was crazy or right. I wasn't ready for how right I'd be. We walked in, her in that dress, black, fitted, stunning. She kissed my cheek, said, "Mingle, okay?" Then she was gone, weaving through suits and smiles. I grabbed a beer, leaned against the bar, scanning. That's when Chris appeared, tall, polished, clapping her shoulder like they owned the place. She lit up. Not for me, for him. My grip tightened on the bottle. People laughed around me, clinking glasses, but I was stuck on her. On them. The DJ cranked up, and Chris leaned in, voice carrying. "Dance with me?" She didn't hesitate, didn't look my way, just laughed and said, "I'm in," and I felt the rope slip. I wasn't always this guy. The one stewing in a ballroom, jealousy boiling over. Growing up, I was quiet, steady. Granddad made sure of that. After my parents split, he took me in, taught me how to tie a lure, how to sit still and think. "Life's a long game, Ethan," he'd say, reeling in a catch. "Don't rush the hook." I carried that into my marriage. Lauren's fire balanced my calm. But that calm was cracking. Her late nights weren't new. Marketing's chaotic, she'd say, but the wine on her breath was. The distance was. I'd wake up to her side of the bed cold, her texting in the kitchen at odd hours. I'd ask, "Everything okay?" She'd nod, distracted. "Just work. Always just work." But those texts told a different story. After the work husband line, I couldn't unsee it. Her smirks, her secrecy. I'd catch her humming, lost in some private joy, then clamming up when I walked in. My gut screamed she was hiding something, but my head said, "Give her space." Granddad's patience clashed with my doubt. Therefore, I went to that party arm with both, watching, waiting. She barely acknowledged me after we arrived. Floated off to Chris like I was wallpaper. I stood there, beers sweating in my hand, cataloging it all. His hand on her arm, her leaning into his jokes. The way she tossed her hair, same way she used to for me. Then the dance. Chris's "dance with me" wasn't a question, it was a pull, and she went willingly. No glance at me, no pause. Just, "I'm in," and off they went, slow and close under those stupid string lights. My heart slammed against my ribs. I told myself to breathe, to think, but every step they took twisted the knife. People around me chatted, oblivious. A guy next to me said, "Nice party." I nodded, jaw tight. Nice. It was torture. The rope Granddad talked about. It wasn't just slipping now, it was burning my hands. And when Chris spun her, her smile wide and careless, something in me broke loose. I couldn't sit still anymore. The beer hit the floor before I realized I'd let go. Glass didn't shatter, just rolled, spilling foam. I didn't care. Lauren and Chris swayed 10 feet away, her hands on his shoulders, his on her waist. 7 years with her, and she didn't even check if I was okay with it. Didn't look my way. Just laughed, head tilted back like I wasn't there. I'd spent months doubting myself, telling myself those texts were harmless, that work husband was a dumb joke. But this was real. My granddad's voice cut through the haze. "A man's got limits, Ethan." I'd hit mine. I shoved off the bar, legs moving before my brain caught up. The crowd blurred, suits, dresses, clinking glasses. "Hey!" I barked, louder than I meant. Chris stumbled as I pushed him. Not hard, just enough. Lauren spun, eyes wide. "Ethan, what the hell?" she hissed, stepping between us. Chris smirked, wiping his hands on his pants. "Relax, man, it's just a dance." That smirk did it. My fist flew, caught his jaw clean. He went down, sprawling across the floor. Gasps rippled out. Lauren grabbed my arm, yelling, "Stop it!" But I couldn't hear her over the blood pounding in my ears. Someone shouted for security. Chris groaned, clutching his face, a thin line of red on his lip. I lunged again, didn't think, just moved, but arms hooked me back. The room tilted. Table scraped. A glass crashed somewhere. Lauren's voice sliced through. "You're insane. Security dragged me toward the door as bodies scattered. I glimpsed Chris, still down, people hovering. Paramedics were coming. I heard the call. My hand shook, knuckles raw. Lauren stared at me, furious, betrayed, like I'd crossed the line. But she'd crossed it first, hadn't she? Therefore, I stopped fighting the guards. Let them pull me out. The night air hit me hard, cold, sharp. I stood there, breathing, replaying it. Her with him. That dance. My swing. Chaos. I'd ruined the party. Maybe more. But as the ambulance lights flashed in the distance, one thought settled in. I wasn't done yet. The ambulance lights painted the parking lot red and blue as I leaned against our car, hands still trembling. Inside, Lauren was probably still screaming at someone. Me, Chris, the world. I turned a swanky company party into a mess. Spilled drinks, flipped chairs, a guy on a stretcher. My granddad would have shaken his head. You don't lose your cool, Ethan, he'd say, showing me how to untangle a fishing line. You fix it. But I hadn't fixed anything. I'd snapped. That dance, her with Chris, so casual. So them, it wasn't just a moment. It was every doubt I'd buried, every late night I'd ignored exploding at once. Security had shoved me out, barking about cops, but no one followed. Guess they had bigger problems. I drove home alone, her seat empty, her perfume still lingering. She didn't call, didn't text. I sat on our couch, staring at the wall where we'd hung a photo from that coastal road trip. Her laughing, me squinting into the sun. It felt like a lie now. But then I remembered her face in the ballroom. Shock, then fury. No guilt. No, I'm sorry. Just blame. Therefore, I grabbed my keys again. She wasn't home, but her stuff was, her laptop, still synced to our cloud. I'd peeked at her phone before, but this was different. I needed answers. The screen glowed. Emails, texts, photos. A folder labeled work. My heart sank as I clicked. Selfies of her and Chris at a bar, his arm around her. Messages. Ethan's out late tonight. Drinks. Her reply. You know it. My throat tightened. This wasn't a flirt. This was a secret. Months of it. I scrolled, numb, until one hit me. He's clueless. We're good. Clueless. Me. I shut the laptop, hands cold. Granddad always said a man's got limits. But he never told me what to do when they're crossed. I wasn't shaking anymore. Something else settled in, quiet, steady, sharp. The rope was gone, burned away, and I wasn't letting her tie me up in it again. Lauren and I hadn't always been this tangle of silence and suspicion. Early on, we'd stay up late, her legs across my lap, plotting dumb stuff like opening a food truck. Tacos, she'd say, grinning. We'd crush it. I'd laugh, say we'd be broke in a week. That was us, dreamers tethered. But that tether frayed over time. Work swallowed her. She'd come home wired, distracted, muttering about deadlines. I'd cook dinner, try to pull her back, but she'd drift to her phone. I thought it was stress. Thought I could wait it out. But after the party, after that swing at Chris, I saw it wasn't stress. It was him. She didn't come home that night. Texted once, staying with a friend. You're unhinged. Unhinged. Like I'd imagined it all. I paced the house, replaying her with Chris, her ease, her disregard. Then I sat down with her laptop again. Couldn't stop myself. More messages. Plans to meet outside work. A call log, late nights, long talks. My knuckles throbbed from the punch, but this hurt worse. She'd built something with him, right under me. Therefore, I waited. She rolled in the next morning, bags under her eyes, hair messy. Didn't look at me. Just started packing a suitcase. I can't do this, she said, voice flat. You humiliated me, Ethan. I need space. I stood there, arms crossed. Was it just a dance, Lauren? She froze, then glared. You're paranoid. Always have been. No denial. No explanation. Just deflection. She zipped the bag, walked out. Door slammed. Silence roared. I should have felt broken, but I didn't. Granddad's voice came back. When the fish slips the hook, you don't chase it. You bait again. I wasn't chasing her. Not like that. I sank onto the couch, staring at that road trip photo. Her smile mocked me. Clueless, huh? Fine. If she wanted space, I'd give it to her, wide, empty, and cold. But I wasn't done baiting the line. She'd see soon enough. And so would Chris. The house felt too big without her. Lauren's stuff was half gone, clothes, shoes, that candle she always lit after work. She left the photo on the wall, though, like a taunt. I didn't take it down, kept it there to remind me. I'd spent years building this life with her. Nights fixing leaky faucets, mornings burning toast together. Now it was just me and the echo of her calling me unhinged. My hands still ached from the party, a dull pulse where I'd hit Chris. I didn't regret it, not then. He'd smirked, and I'd swung. Simple as that. But the fallout wasn't simple. Word spread fast. Her coworkers texting her, probably about the crazy husband. She'd spun it her way, I was sure. Poor Lauren, stuck with a loose cannon. But those texts on her laptop said different. I pulled it out again, digging deeper. Found an email. Her to Chris. He's working late. Meet me at 8. Dated 2 months back. My shift at the warehouse. Overtime, I'd taken to save for a trip she'd wanted. Irony stung. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Granddad used to say, "Truth's a slow fish. Takes time to bite." It was biting now. Therefore, I stopped pacing. Stopped fuming. Got calm, too calm, maybe. She wanted space. I'd give her more than that. I grabbed my phone, scroll contacts. Found Mike, a buddy from high school, now a PI. Owed me one after I helped him move his junker car years ago. "Need a favor," I said when he picked up. "Tail someone." Quietly. He didn't ask much, just took Chris's name and description. I hung up, feeling the shift. Rage had fueled me at the party, but this was colder. Sharper. Lauren thought I was clueless. Chris probably did too. Let them. I wasn't swinging wild anymore. Granddad taught me patience. How to wait for the ripple, set the hook. I'd wait now, gather line, because when I pulled, it wouldn't just be a punch. It'd be something they couldn't shrug off. Something permanent. Days dragged after Lauren left. I'd walk past her empty closet, half expecting her laugh to spill out. It didn't. She'd vanished. Physically, sure, but she'd been slipping away longer than that. I kept busy. Work, gym, anything to drown the quiet. But at night, it crept back. Those texts, that dance. Her calling me paranoid when I'd seen the truth in her eyes. I trusted her once, blind and easy. Granddad taught me trust was earned. He'd learned it the hard way after Grandma walked out on him. People show you who they are, he'd growl, gutting a fish. Believe him. I hadn't believed Lauren's distance, her excuses. Should've. But the party cracked that denial wide open. Therefore, I leaned on Mike. He called Wednesday, voice low. "Got something. Your guy, Chris, he's engaged. Fiancé's out of town a lot. Lauren's been at his place. Pics if you want him." My stomach lurched. Engaged? I didn't want pics. Didn't need to see her car parked there, her shadow in his window. "Anything else?" I asked. Mike paused. "Yeah, he's rattled from the party. Keeps looking over his shoulder." "Good. Let him squirm." I think Mike hung up. Sat there processing. Chris had a whole life, a fiancé, and Lauren was what? His side project? My hands curled into fists, but I breathed it out. No more swinging. I had her laptop still, digital fingerprints. Opened it, found more, a Venmo trail. Small payments to Chris, coffee, drinks. For my work husband, one memo read. Cute. Real cute. My jaw tightened. She'd used our money, our savings, for him. Therefore, I shifted gears. Copied it all. Texts, emails, transactions. Sent a zip file to an old email I barely used. Insurance. Then I stared at that road trip photo again. Her smile wasn't joy anymore. It was a mask. I'd been the fool, but not anymore. Granddad's slow fish was circling. I could feel the tug. Soon, I'd reel it in. And when I did, Lauren wouldn't just lose space. She'd lose everything she'd built on those lies. Work kept me sane, or close to it. I'd clock in at the warehouse, haul boxes, let the sweat burn out the mess in my head. Lauren and I used to joke about my job. Her in her fancy office, me in steel toes. My blue-collar hero. She'd tease, kissing my cheek. That memory soured now. She'd traded me for a guy in loafers. But I wasn't wallowing. Not anymore. The party was a flashpoint. Messy, raw. But it woke me up. I'd seen her with Chris, felt the betrayal in my bones. Granddad's words rang. Don't chase what's gone. Reel in what's left. What was left was me, and a plan. Mike's intel was gold. Chris engaged. Lauren sneaking around. Cash flowing. I had proof, too. Her laptop was a treasure trove of stupidity. She hadn't even logged out. Therefore, I got surgical. First move, her job. She loved that marketing gig, her creative outlet. I pulled up the flirty texts. Lunch? Work husband? And drafted an email. Anonymous. Sent it to her boss with a note. Your employees mixing business with pleasure. Thought you'd want to know. No threats, just facts. Firms like hers hate drama. Liability's a nightmare. I hit send, leaned back. Pictured her face when HR called. But that was just the start. Chris's fiancée was next. Mike gave me her name, Sarah. Found her on social media. All smiles and wedding hashtags. She didn't deserve this. Neither did I. So I packaged it, texts, that bar selfie, a shot from the party Mike snapped. Sent it from a burner account. He's not who you think. Let her take it from there. My hands didn't shake this time. No rage. Just purpose. Granddad taught me fishing wasn't about anger. It was timing. The hook was set. Now I waited for the pull. Lauren thought I was clueless, unhinged. Chris probably laughed about me over drinks. Fine. Laugh. Because when the ripples hit, they'd see I wasn't swinging blind anymore. I was casting wide. And the catch was coming. Slow, sure, and heavy. The warehouse smelled like cardboard and dust, but it was my refuge. I'd stack boxes, lose myself in the rhythm, let the ache in my hands drown the one in my chest. Lauren used to text me on breaks. Dumb stuff like don't lift too much, hero. Now my phone stayed silent. She'd been gone 2 weeks, and I'd gone from wrecked to resolute. That night at the party, her with Chris, my fist on his jaw, felt distant like a flare that lit up the dark. I saw her now. Saw them. Granddad always said, when the fish bites, don't flinch. I wasn't flinching. I'd sent those texts to her boss. Watched the hook sink in. Monday, she called. First time since she'd left. Voice tight, sharp. Ethan, someone tipped off my work. I'm on probation. Was it you? I kept it cool. Sounds rough. I said, like I hadn't typed every word. She cursed, hung up. I smiled just a little. Her job was her world. Probation was a crack in it. But then Mike called, voice low. Chris's fiancée got your package. She's livid, confronted him. He's spinning, saying Lauren chased him. Chased him? I almost laughed. All those work husband texts, her sneaking around. And he was playing victim? Therefore, I dug deeper. Her laptop, still mine, technically had more. A draft email to Chris. Ethan's a mess. Let's keep this quiet. Dated after the party. My mess cleaned her slate, huh? I saved it, added it to my stash. Granddad taught me to read the water. Ripples show the fight underneath. The ripples were spreading. Her job teetered. Chris squirmed. I wasn't done. I'd been the fool, clueless, she'd said. But that was over. I leaned back, staring at that road trip photo still on the wall. Her smile wasn't a taunt anymore. It was a target. She'd built her little game on lies on me. Now I dismantle it, piece by piece. Not with fists, with precision. The hook was deep. Time to pull. Lauren and I used to dream big. Food trucks, beach houses, stupid stuff that kept us up laughing. That was before she traded me for late nights and Chris's smirks. I'd missed it. Willfully, maybe because I loved her. Granddad warned me once, gutting a perch. Love blinds you, Ethan. Keep one eye open. I hadn't. But now both were wide. Mike's call about Chris flipped the script. He told his fiancée, Sarah, that Lauren was the aggressor, the one pushing. After everything, texts, meetups, my money in his coffee cups. He was ditching her. I checked my burner account. Sarah had replied, thanks. He's done. Short, brutal. I pictured Chris scrambling, his perfect life cracking. Therefore, it hit me, Lauren was alone in this now. No work husband to lean on. I pulled up her laptop again, found a gold mine. A text thread synced from her phone. Chris, last week, Sarah knows. You started this. I'm out. Lauren's reply. You can't just leave me with this mess. He didn't respond. She'd chased him, and he'd bolted. My chest tightened, not pity, just shock. All her secrecy, her ease at that party, and he'd cut her loose. I sat there, letting it sink in. She'd painted me as the problem, unhinged, paranoid, but her house of cards was folding. Her job hung by a thread, thanks to my tip. Now Chris turned tail. Granddad's voice hummed. Fish fight hardest when they're caught. She was fighting, I could tell, probation at work, scrambling to save face. But I wasn't finished. I'd sent the first ripples. Her boss, Sarah. They'd hit. Hard. I stared at that road trip photo, her grin frozen. Once it warmed me. Now it fueled me. She called me clueless, built this on my trust. Therefore, I planned the next pull. Not wild, not loud, just cold. Calculated. She'd feel it soon. Her world shrinking, her lies bouncing back. I wasn't the guy she'd left anymore. I was something else. Something she'd underestimated. And the water was about to jump. Work was my anchor. Push a forklift, stack a pallet, repeat. It kept my hands busy while my head spun. Lauren's life was unraveling, and I'd lit the match. Her job teetered after my email. Probation's a warning shot in her world. Then Chris bailed, blaming her to Sarah. I'd handed Sarah the ammo. She'd fired it. Mike texted me Tuesday. Sarah's suing Lauren. Emotional distress. Lawyers circling. Suing? I hadn't expected that. Sarah's pain had teeth, legal ones, and Lauren was the target. I pictured her, panicked, calling Chris, getting silence. My tip to her boss had been a nudge. This was a shove. Therefore, I checked her laptop again, couldn't resist. An email from her HR. Violation of conduct policy. Termination effective Friday. Friday. 3 days away. She was done. Fired over those texts I'd leaked. No more creative outlet. No more strutting in heels. I leaned back, exhaling. Granddad used to say, real slow, Ethan. Let him tire. I was reeling. Her job gone, Chris gone, now a lawsuit. Ripples turned to waves. But there was more. I felt it. She'd been cocky, untouchable, dancing with him like I didn't exist. That memory burned, but it sharpened me too. I'd been the steady one, fixing our sink, paying bills, while she'd played. Not anymore. Therefore, I dug into our finances. Years back, Granddad told me, keep a stash, son, just in case. I had a separate account, small at first. I'd moved half our savings there over time, quietly, while she splurged on work lunches. Her Venmo to Chris proved it. Our money, her lies. I found a bank statement. She drained our joint account last month. Thousands. For him. My jaw clenched. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd robbed me. I saved that too. Every transfer, every memo. The hook was deep now, line taut. She'd feel the pull soon. Jobless, sued, broke. I stared at that photo on the wall. Her laugh mocked her now, not me. I wasn't swinging wild. I was reeling in. And the catch was heavy. The house was a tomb. Quiet, hollow, hers only in echoes. Lauren's candle sat unlit on the counter, a relic of when she'd unwind here. I'd unwind too back then, her head on my chest, some dumb show on. That was before Chris, before the party, before I saw her for real. Now I saw everything. Her job was toast. HR's email confirmed it. Sarah's lawsuit loomed. Legal papers probably piling up wherever she'd crashed. She'd lost Chris, lost control. I'd pushed those dominoes, her boss, Sarah, and they'd fallen fast. But the money? That was the knife twist. She'd siphoned our savings for him. Coffee, drinks, trips. Thousands I'd earned sweating in that warehouse. Granddad's stash saved me. Half our cash, safe in my name. She didn't know. Therefore, I called my lawyer, Tom. Old friend, no-nonsense guy. She took joint funds for her fling. I said, sending the Venmo proof. What's my play? Tom whistled. That's leverage, Ethan. Divorce her, claim theft. She's got no ground. No ground. I like that. But I had one more card. Months back, I'd recorded her, casual chat, her bragging to Chris on speaker. Ethan's oblivious. I moved some cash, he won't notice. Idiot me hadn't clocked it then. Now, gold. I burned it to a drive, paired it with bank records. Therefore, I set the meet. Coffee shop, neutral turf. She showed up Thursday, pale, hair a mess, eyes darting. Sign the papers, I said, sliding them over. She glared. You've ruined me. I didn't flinch. Slid an envelope next, transcript of that call. Her words in black and white. No, I said, voice steady. You did. She scanned it, froze. Where'd you? Doesn't matter. I cut in. Sign or Tom files this. Your call. Her hand shook, pen hovering. She signed. I stood, left the envelope. Walked out. Granddad's voice hummed. Hooks out when they stop fighting. She'd stopped. Jobless, sued, broke, her world gutted. I'd reeled it all in, and I wasn't shaking anymore. Sun cut through the warehouse windows, sharp and clean. I hauled a crate, felt the strain in my shoulders, a good ache earned. Lauren was gone, paper signed, life imploded. She'd left with nothing but that envelope, her own words staring back. I kept the house, the stash, my footing. She'd taken the joint account. Empty now, and the fallout. No job, a lawsuit, Chris's silence. I'd done that. Not with fists, with patience. Granddad would have nodded, maybe even grinned. Good catch, Ethan, he'd say, wiping his knife. I caught her lies, her game, and pulled until it broke. That party, her dance, my swing, felt like years ago. I'd been raw then, reeling. Now I was steady. Therefore, I went home, stood in the living room. That road trip photo still hung, her smile my squint. I took it down, set it in a drawer. Didn't need it mocking me. The house was mine now, quiet but not empty. I'd fill it again, someday. Maybe not with her laughter, but something real. I thought about her, wherever she was scrambling alone. She'd call me clueless, unhinged. Thought I'd stay that way. But I turned it. Used her laptop, Mike's eyes, Tom's law. Her job crumbled. Sarah's suit buried her. That recording sealed it. She'd underestimated me, and it cost her everything. Granddad taught me trust was a rope. Hers burned through. Mine held. Therefore, I walked outside, breathed the dusk. No rage left, just clarity. I wasn't the guy from that dive bar anymore, chasing her grin. I wasn't the fool at the party, swinging wild. I was harder now, quieter, scarred sure, but standing. Chris left that night, in an ambulance, a bloody noses trophy. Lauren left our marriage with less. Her lies in ashes, her world sunk. Me? I left with myself, whole again. Not warm, not soft, but free. Granddad was right. Truth's a slow fish. I'd waited, reeled, and won. And I'd never let it slip the hook again.